module introducing if statements. And now what we want to do is take our if statements up to the next level, because when you're creating your logic, it's not simply going to be, if this is true, do this, otherwise do something else. It's never just that simple, that there's always more things involved, that maybe two things need to be true, or maybe if this was false, then maybe we want to check something else, and if that was true, then we're going to do something different.
Yeah.
And
basically, life's just more complicated than that. So
exactly.
We're going to need a little more capacity to handle a little more complex situations.
Yeah, it's more than just black and white. There's a lot of gray here, and that's what we want to take a look at. So, there's a lot of different conditions that can affect the outcome. So if you're in England and you say hello, you say hello. If you're in Germany, you say guten Tag. If you're in France, you say bonjour. To everybody who's a native speaker of that language, I apologize for my complete lack of an accent. I just say everything in an American accent. So for that, I do apologize. If you win the lottery and the prize is over $1 million, then you can retire to a life of luxury. It'd be kind of nice to retire to a life of luxury.
I'm all for that, yeah.
Yep, absolutely. And then finally, last but not least, if it's Monday, check to see if there's fresh coffee. Actually, if it's a day ending in Y for me, go check to see if there's fresh coffee. I always need coffee. But in any event, go in, check to see if there's coffee. If not, then we'll go to the nearest cafe. So there's a lot of different things that are going to drive that decision-making process, that we're going to have, an if, then, otherwise, otherwise, otherwise. That is what we're going to try and build in. So to kind of keep going with this little example, if you're in Canada, say hello, or England. If you're in Germany, say guten Tag. If you're in France, say bonjour. It's sort of an interesting situation because of the fact that you've got these multiple possible outcomes. That it's not simply going to be, if one value is this way, do this, otherwise we're just going to move on to something else. So it's one value that we're checking, but it could have different entries inside of it. Now, we've already seen this syntax here, that we've already seen the, where are you from, and then country equals. We could also have a to upper,
Yeah, but that basic logic of,
Exactly.
Somebody enters a value, if we check if their values equal something specific, react accordingly.
Exactly. Yeah, I was just being pedantic up there.
Yeah.
But yeah, so what we're going to do is we're going to do that very basic if, and away we go. We've seen that. We've already seen that. But now what we want to do is we want to check to see, well, are you in Germany? Or are you in France?
Yeah.
And so this is where the elif, or else if, comes into play. Now, here's the most important point to keep in mind about a compound if statement like this. The way that if statements work is that they will execute the code associated with the first thing that tests as true. So if we bring it back to the slide here, if it turned out that you had entered in Canada, so I said Canada, C-A-N-A-D-A, and I had typed that in. Now what's going to happen is that it's going to run this first check. That's, of course, going to test as true. It's going to run that bit of code, and then it's going to skip to the end of the if block. If it turned out that it was Germany, then that would test as false. It would go here, and then again, skip to the end. So it's always going to be whatever the first one is that matches. So it's not going to be like a game of Plinko or anything like that, where it's going to bounce and check and check and check and check and check. It's not. The first one that tests as positive, it's going to run the associated code and then exit out of the if statement.
And that can be really important. In this case, I mean, you're never going to have somebody enter a value that's equal to Canada and Germany at the same time.
Right.
But where that can become really significant is, let's take our example of, hey, you get a free toaster if you deposit more than $100. I'm bringing back my free toaster.
Yay, toasters!
But what if you donate over $1,000, you get a free TV. If you put it as a deposit. So imagine the situation if I was using elif statements there, and I said, if deposit is over $100, you get a free toaster. And then I say, elif, you deposit over $1,000, you get a free TV. guess what? They deposit $5,000, and it's going to say, oh, they put in over $100. That was the first condition. It's going to say, oh, you get a free toaster. It's going to exit. And they'll be mad because they want their free TV.
Exactly. So, and I'm kind of sketching this out real quick. Free toaster, LF deposit greater than 1,000, and then and I know I'm spacing over. That's a Zoom It thing. Zoom It won't let me do tabs, but in any event, and then free TV. So, of course, here's the catch: is that just like Susan said, if I deposit, let's say, $4,500, last I checked, in my math anyway, $4,500 is greater than 1,000. So the bit of code that I want to run is going to be that bit right there. Well, which code is going to run? Well, the code that is going to run is going to be that part right there. Why? Well, because 4,500 is greater than 100. So that little bit of code is going to execute, it's going to go down here, and you're going to be stuck with a crummy toaster rather than a brand new TV. So ordering does matter. And Susan talked an awful lot in the prior module about
free toasters.
About free toasters. about going in and testing your code. And this is extremely important, especially in situations like this, because it's so subtle that if you go in and you read it, and you're reading it as a human,
you wouldn't catch it.
It sort of makes sense, exactly, because we're going to really kind of be a bit more flexible. The problem is that the computer is not. It's doing exactly what you told it to do. And that's always the worst kind of bug. The worst kind of bug is when it did exactly what you told it to do. You hate that. And that's exactly what happened here, is that it did exactly what you told it to do. And it said, well, 4,500 greater than 100. We're going to execute that. We're going to go down here. And again, you're stuck with the crummy toaster.
And this is just another one of those reminders of the importance of doing your testing.
Yeah.
Test those conditions. Test less than 100. Test exactly 100. Test greater than 100. If you've got that LF of 1,000, you also need to test under 1,000, equal 1,000, over 1,000. That's why the testing is absolutely crucial when you start adding these branching conditions into your code, because otherwise you're going to miss it when you do make those mistakes.
Exactly.
It'll happen. You're going to do this. One day you're going to do this. And when you finally figure it out, you're going to go, they told me I was even going to do this mistake, and I can't believe it took me 4 hours to figure it out. And you will. One of you out there is going to literally do that. Go, I watched that video, and they told me I was going to make this mistake.
And sure enough, you did.
But that's why the testing is so essential.
Yep. Now, one last little thing here. Let's go back to the right slide. Highlighter, there we go. The elif statement, you're going to notice, is not indented. And the reason for that is it's just like the else block, is that this is what's going to run if it's Canada, this is what's going to run if it's Guten Tag, this is what's going to run if it happens to be Bonjour. And so that's why the elif is right there.
Oh, by the way, we have a comment somebody in the comment said, oh, already made that mistake.
Oh,
so there we go. So we weren't lying.
I love your predictive capabilities. Somebody already had, and Susan called it.
Would you like me to suggest some lottery numbers later?
All right. Now, the last little thing is, what happened if somebody entered in something that's outside of the bounds? So what would happen if we used Canada, Germany, France, and you entered in Japan, you entered in Italy, you entered in South Africa, you entered in, some other country here? Well, let's sort of kind of talk this thing through. It's going to check the first one. So let's say we entered in Japan. So we'll just say Japan. So you entered in Japan. Country equals Canada. Well, nope, that's not it. Let's go down. If country is Germany, nope, that's not it. Let's go down. If country is France, nope, that's not it. So it's just simply, in this particular case, going to exit out of that if block, because we didn't tell it what to do in the case of Japan.
Right.
Now, of course,
we saw last module, we saw you could use an else, which meant if this condition isn't true, you can also say that for if none of these conditions are true.
That's it. Yeah, you could just add in that else statement to catch everything, well, else. And adding in an else statement, just as a real quick best practice thing, adding in an else statement can be extremely helpful, especially when you are dealing with input from something external, and this could be a file, this could be user input, because it gives you the ability to do two things. That number one, it gives you the ability to display out an error message, hey, this was outside of the range of values, ask the user to try again, but also B, it can be a little bit of a security thing as well, because in this particular case, country, it's not in a range of values that we were expecting, and so that could wind up causing potential issues otherwise. So it's not a bad idea at all when you're dealing with something like that and you've got multiple to add in an if statement so that way you can display the error message or handle that otherwise, or maybe even set it to whatever you want your default value to be.
Sure.
And then you'll notice down here at the very bottom, you're going to notice I did, let me just erase all my ink. There we go. You'll notice down at the very bottom I've got my else and then print and then aloha, ciao, g'day, ciao. And we'll go from there. I'm having a good time.
Awesome. Go for it.
All right. So let's go in and take a look at a little demo here on our else if. And what I'm going to do is open up Visual Studio. There we go. And let me file new project and Python. And let's go in and complex if statements. And you know what? Let's go ahead and kind of keep having fun with the hockey.
Okay.
From
Awesome.
from before. All right.
Go Sens.
So let's go ahead and say team equals, and then we'll say input, enter your favorite without the U.
Okay. I'll forgive you that since you're talking hockey.
Hockey team?
I got to visit Russia last year, and I went to the store for Team Ska, which was kind of cool.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I mean, man, I had a great time talking hockey with the Russians.
I believe it.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm also going to do a real quick two-upper. As well, just to go ahead and have that. So I'm going to go ahead and say if team equals, and yes, I'm doing this on purpose, let's go in and say Flyers.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yes, that's your favorite team.
That's my favorite team.
That's right.
Now, I've purposefully done this. I've entered in my two little mistakes, kind of as a review, that number one, we need double equals.
That means
that's equality.
Is equal to.
Yep.
Right.
So again, just to differentiate up here, that single, that's the assignment. That doubles, that's checking the equality between the two.
Right.
Okay. And then the second thing is I need my colon.
And that's just syntax. You just have to remember it. And when you forget it, well, you'll go back and go, oh, yeah, I forgot the colon. Don't worry about it. You're going to forget it. When you see the little squiggles and things, you'll go back and you'll fix it.
Exactly. So we'll say if team equals Flyers, we'll go ahead and say print and best team ever. I'm not feeling very creative, so I'm just going to go with that. And then elif team equals senators. We'll go ahead and say print and then go sends go, and then elif team equals Rangers, and we'll just simply say go Rangers.
That works. That's fine. Yeah, keep it simple for now.
Yeah, exactly. So we'll just kind of keep going with that. And then down here at the very bottom, we'll say else, and we'll just simply say print. I don't have...
Oh, you're bringing us back to Module 1 there.
I am.
You have the challenge of I have a single quote inside my string, so you've chosen to solve that by using an escape character in front of it. You're bringing us back to like the second module. That's mean when we're this late in the day.
I'm just trying to keep everybody on their
All right.
And I'm really just trying to keep building on what we've already done. Okay. In any event, so there is our basic little statement. I'm going to go ahead and tap on play here, use the touchscreen. We'll go ahead and say Flyers, hit enter. Sure enough, it says best team ever. Hit enter. Let's go ahead and run this again, and let's say senators, and hit enter, and you'll notice that it'll say
go Sens, go.
And you know, one real quick thing, I'm going to throw in a breakpoint right here.
Oh,
just
yes.
going to walk through this, something I always really like to do, and hit start, and then we'll go ahead and say Blackhawks, which I don't have, and I did this one on purpose.
Okay.
So we'll just say Blackhawks and hit enter, and then we'll just come back down to Visual Studio, and we'll just keep hitting that step into, and what you're going to notice is if you keep an eye on the arrow on the right side of my on the right side of the screen, what you're going to notice is that the arrow, I hit it once already, is now on senators. I'm going to hit it again. It's now on rangers.
Because it's checking. It's going, it's here. No,
Exactly.
it's not here. Go check the next condition.
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah, so it's looking for a match, and of course it's going to leave disappointed because there is no match, because it's Blackhawks, so you're going to notice that we're now down at
And it's
at
now
the L
actually,
statement.
now it's actually going to go execute the command in the L statement.
Exactly. Yep. There we go. And so now, there we go. I don't have anything clever to say here, which I don't. Okay, perfect. So there is our else-if statements. And again, just to hit the point one more time, keep in mind that the order in which you do your logic, especially when you're dealing with numbers, is extremely important. So make sure that you are going in and doing that testing so that way everything is coming out the way that you expected. One very simple strategy, one very simple technique is if you're using greater than signs, then when you list them, start with the biggest number. And if you're using less than signs, start with the smallest number. Kind of the simplest way, I think, to go in and approach all of that. Awesome. All right. Now, I will always remember, I was in 7th grade here in the U.S., so 13 years old, so whatever the math works out to, wherever it is that you happen to be. And we were going to learn logic in our math class, and our teacher got up in front of the room, and he told a room full of 13-year-olds, I'm going to teach you how to win every argument with your parents.
Oh, that would go over well.
That's a smart teacher. That's knowing your audience. That's what that is, ladies and gentlemen. That is knowing your audience. Of course, immediately we all perked up like, oh yeah, we're ready to go. And so he then started going into the concepts of ands and ors, which is exactly what I'm going to drill into here. And what he said was very simply this, and I'm going to hit this right now, and then we'll dig in and we'll kind of come back and start reviewing this, is you always want to use or. Because if you say, I'm going to go to Steve's house, and I'm going to go to the game, in order for that sentence to be true, in order for what you just said to be truthful, logically speaking, you must have done both of those. So you have to have gone to Steve's, you have to have gone to the game. On the flip side, however, if you say or, if you say, I'm going to go to Steve's house, or I'm going to go to the game, you could do one or the other and be perfectly truthful, at least as far as logic goes. My parents didn't go for it, by the way.
Didn't work?
No.
Worth a try.
Yeah, absolutely.
I like the logic, yeah.
Yep, you know. But that's honestly the way that I always remember this. So, and both sides had to be true, or one side or the other. Keep that right there. I'm going to pull that back out in a couple of minutes, but before we get there, let's go ahead and start talking about a little scenario. So, congratulations, you just won the lottery.
Sweet.
But here's the thing. If you win the lottery, there's obviously a lot of different denominations. I mean, I could go out, I could get a little scratcher, I could, go ahead and scratch it off.
I usually win enough money to pay for a ticket if I win anything. I buy a $4 ticket, and my big win is I win $4.
That's about it.
That's what I usually win, yeah.
That's about it. So did you win the lottery? Technically, yes. Did you win a significant amount of money?
Do I get to retire?
Yeah, do you get to
a life
retire?
of luxury on my $4 win?
Yeah,
probably not.
Yeah, you're going to need to use some creative spending in order to be able to retire on $4. I mean, if you can do it, go for it. But yeah, so we really need to test two things there. So, for example, kind of going back to, maybe you're writing a banking app. And so what we need to do is maybe test for two things. That maybe we need to test for the type of account, and we need to test for the deposit amount to determine whether or not we're going to give you that little free prize. So that if you're going with maybe a basic checking account, then we're not going to give you a TV. But if you open up a checking account or a checking and savings, and you deposited $5,000, now we're going to give you that toaster, then both of those have to be true. That's going to require a little bit more complex logic. So, a lot of different scenarios.
Sure.
So I require $5,000 rather than $100.
That's what you need to retire in a life of luxury?
Well, no, for the toaster.
Okay. I thought you were going to retire to a life of luxury if you won $5,000.
$5,000, yeah.
I don't know what currency. I know that U.S. dollars are worth more than Canadian dollars, but I didn't think the exchange rate was that good.
Not these days.
Okay.
All right, so what we need to do is we need to go in and check for a couple of different things. So again, if you win the lottery, only $5. Can't retire on that. If you win $1 million, oh yeah, but if the lottery gives out $1 million but you didn't win it, well, you can't retire.
Yep.
So what we need is we need both of those to be true. We need an and statement here. So we need to have won, and the prize needs to be over $1 million. So. Exactly.
I'll do the movie reference.
Yeah.
$1 million.
$1 million. Thank you. Thank you.
Sorry, bad movie references. My apologies.
I set you up for that. You can blame
you did.
me.
Yeah.
Yep. Now, here's the thing. You have to use and here. Because what you're doing is you're saying both sides must be true. So you have to have won the lottery, and it has to have been greater than $1 million. So that is where and comes into play. So both won lottery and big win has to have been true.
Yep.
Otherwise, it's not going to execute that. So both of those sides have to be true. Now, one of the things is that this can be a little bit complex trying to figure out, okay, well, you know, when is it actually going to run this? When is it not going to run this? Mm-hmm. And I love this table that you have here because it breaks it down very simply. That if the first condition is and the second condition is, that is what the result is going to wind up being. And what I want to highlight here, let me highlight this on the screen, is you're going to notice false, false, and false. Put simply, to summarize all of this in one sentence.
Yep.
If there's a false anywhere, the answer is false.
Yep. When you're using an and statement, everything has to be true for it to be true and to execute the code.
Exactly. Yep. So let's go in, take a look at our real quick and here, and I'm going to open back up Visual Studio, and you know what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and do a real quick Control-K, Control-C.
Right.
Yep.
Comment out that code.
Exactly.
Yep.
And I'm going to say sport equals, and we'll say input, and we'll say enter your favorite sport.
That's right.
Yep.
There we go, for all of those who prefer cricket or tennis.
Exactly. Yep, that's it. And so we'll go in and do that. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep it relatively straightforward. I'm just going to go with an if statement. Now, here's what I'm looking for. I'm only interested in the hockey team, the Rangers. There's also an MLB team as well, the Rangers. So we have an NHL team Rangers. We have an MLB team Rangers. So I'm only interested if it turns out that we're talking about the Rangers hockey team.
Right.
That's what I'm looking for. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say if, and we'll say sport equals hockey, and make sure it's
you know
lower,
what? Because I know in Ottawa we have a Rangers football team.
Oh, well there you go.
So it happens.
Yep, it absolutely does. And team equals, and make sure you have your double equals, Christopher. There we go.
Yep, is equal to,
yep,
right?
Is equal to. And let's go ahead and say Rangers. And then we'll go ahead and say...
Don't you miss Messier? He was an awesome Ranger. He was my favorite. He does these commercials now. He's this great hockey player, and now he does these commercials for things like potato chips. He's got this awesome sense of humor. My favorite commercial was, you know, bet you can't eat just one potato chip. He goes, if I lose, you have to play hockey with us. And it's this guy on the street, and then he has one potato chip, and then they show him, you know, playing shinny hockey with a bunch of guys. And it's just an awesome, you know, he's got a sense of humor. It's awesome.
Well, you gotta love it.
Yeah, I like my professional athletes to, you know, have a good sense of humor. We gotta like those.
Absolutely. Okay. So what I've done here is I've put together a very basic little statement where I said if the sport is hockey and the team is the Rangers, then we're going to go ahead and print out I miss Messier. Otherwise, for right now, I'm just going to say I don't know that team. And so let's go in, hit start, favorite team, and let's go in and say Rangers, and then favorite sport, and let's say baseball. And hit enter, you're going to notice that it says I don't know that team. Now, if I go in and I run this again and I say, come here, I say Rangers and I say hockey and hit enter, now you're going to notice that it prints out I miss Messier because they're both true. That we typed in Rangers and we typed in hockey. Cool. All right, so let's go back to our slides here, kind of keep on keeping on.
Yep.
One of the other things that we might want to check is an or. So I only need one side or the other to be true. So if it's Saturday or if it's Sunday, I can sleep in, assuming that it's not a long run day. So if it's Saturday or if it's Sunday, I can sleep in. If it's raining or snowing, can't bike to work. This is our or statements. And what we're looking to do is looking to test whether or not one side or the other is true. Now, before we get in and take a look at our sample, I want to do a little bit of an English versus logic lesson. Let's imagine that I was building something up that was going to do some form of reporting. Well, it would be very common for a sales manager to come up to me and say, hey, Christopher, I need something that's going to display to me the sales from the Northeast and Southeast regions. That's the way that he would say it in English. That's not logic, though.
Ah, that's an excellent point. And yes, this is the kind of thing that gets you when you're writing your code.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because let's think about this again with logic. When we're talking in logic, remember, and I'll go back to the slide here, this perfect slide that Susan put together, you're going to notice with an and statement, they both have to be true. They both must be true, otherwise it's not going to work. So if we're talking about if region equals Northeast and region equals Southeast, you know how many times that's going to test as true?
Never.
Never.
How can a region be equal to two different values at the same time?
Exactly.
Can't happen.
Exactly. So one big thing to keep in mind when you're sitting down to write your code, and again, this is universal, this is not specific to Python. So if you're doing this in SQL, if you're doing this in C#, keep in mind what you're actually looking for. So if you're looking for one side or the other to be true, so Northeast or Southeast, you want an or statement. So even though in English, frequently people will say and, listen to what they're saying, listen to what they're trying to communicate, because quite frequently you're going to need an or statement. You're going to need an or. So one side or the other.
Yep.
Okay. So with that, let's go back into, oh, by the way, one last thing. You'll notice again, table. And the big thing that I want to highlight, there we go. You'll notice anywhere where we have a true, 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 true.
Yeah, so if any of the conditions is true, we're going ahead and executing the code if any of those conditions is true.
Exactly. Yep. All right. So now let's go in, do a demo, give me my or statement. Back to Visual Studio. Okay. So now let's go in and tweak things around just a little bit. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to say,
how about if you're a fan of the Leafs or the Senators, good luck getting the Stanley Cup. I mean, I do love my Sens. I can say that to my Sens because I am a Sens fan, but oh, if we win a Stanley Cup this year, it's going to be a miracle. That's our big trophy, and we've lost a lot of good players. I'm going to be cheering my Sens all season, but I'm not holding my breath for a Stanley Cup this year. I can say it. You can't.
Nobody can beat up my brother except for me.
That's right.
Yep.
Yeah, you can only make fun of yourself.
Okay. So what you're going to notice here, so if the team is the Leafs or the team is the Senators, then we're going to say, good luck getting the cup this year. And so I'm going to leave this the right way first. And let's go in and hit start. Hockey team, Senators, hit enter, sport, hockey, and hit enter. And what you're going to notice here is it's going to say, good luck on getting the cup this year. Now, if I do this, let's go back in. Let's go back to our do a line break here, and let's kind of walk through this logically. We'll say senators and hockey. Let's kind of talk about what's happening behind the scenes. What you're going to notice, there we go. What you're going to notice is that we're first going to check to see whether or not the sport was hockey and the team was the Rangers. Well, we did type in hockey, but we didn't type in the Rangers. So this is going to test as false. So if I escape out of that and I hit F11, which will actually move us down to the next line, you're going to notice that test is false, so it didn't run it. We're now on the elif statement. So now let's go back in, and now let's do the next check. So the next check is simply looking for the team to be the Leafs or Senators. And if we remember, we typed in Senators, so this part here is going to be true. We've got an or statement, which means that now the entire part is going to be true, which means we're going to run that line. Sure enough, I hit F11, and you'll notice the little arrow, that's the line of code that's now going to get executed. And if I just escape out of that, there we go, I can see the display right there.
Perfect.
Cool. All right. Now, I did want to go in and introduce the error here. I am going to say and. This happens constantly, and again.
Because you'll do it because your brain just thinks of it that way. Yeah.
Exactly. Because that's the way that somebody came up to you and asked it. So I'm going to say Senators, and I'm going to say hockey, and I'm going to hit enter. Oh, and I still have the line breaks. That's okay. I'm just going to F5 through that. There we go. And sure enough, it's just going to say, I don't know that team. Because again, the team can't be two separate values. So be very careful about your ands and about your ors. Awesome. All right, back to slides.
Perfect. So we've got ands, we've got ors.
Yep. Now, how about combining them into a single statement? So, for example, maybe I'm looking to say something about the Rangers, but only if they're hockey, but maybe a team named the Maple Leafs, regardless of the sport that we happen to be talking about. So there could be a cricket team somewhere called the Maple Leafs.
All right, sure.
We'll go with it.
Yep.
So maybe I want to say something about all universal teams being the Maple Leafs, or something about the Rangers and them only being hockey. Well, you can go in and combine multiple statements together. So you could string across multiple or statements. You could string across multiple if statements. And I love the breakdown here. Make things a lot easier.
You mean the breaking it over multiple lines?
Yeah.
Yeah, and of course, remembering if you do that, you have to put that backslash to say I'm continuing this if statement on the next line. Mm-hmm. Yes, I did that there, so it's a little easier to read.
Exactly. Now,
This is the one, I have done this one on production. This is a mistake, I'll be honest, there is a mistake here, and I have made this mistake on production code, and it's gone live. Not with the beaver and the moose, but the idea of I had a combination of and or statements, and the end results weren't quite what I expected, and I have seen this happen in code that was live, and it took us a couple of months to figure out what we'd done wrong. So I'll let you walk through this little, or I can walk through it if you like, but go for it.
Okay, so here's what we got. So you're going to notice we've got an and, we've got an or. Now, just like we saw previously, we can have them both.
Absolutely, you can have ands and ors mixed together. It's perfectly legit.
Now, I want to kind of go back and point out earlier on that I was telling the story in my math class, logic, and talked about, and or, both sides have to be true or otherwise. Here's the other thing that I want to point out. This was in math class. Now, the reason that I'm pointing out math class here is because, just like in math, there is a set of precedents here that ands and ors do have precedents.
Just like math.
Yes.
Multiplication and division are done first in math, then addition, subtraction.
Yep.
Well, guess what? Ands and ors, it does the and statements, it'll do all the and statements, and after doing all the and statements, then it'll go and do all the or statements.
Exactly, and in fact, here, you're going to notice that one doesn't work the way that you might expect it. Because what you're going to notice is that it's going to say, well, we put in beaver, and we put in Vietnam as the country, so you might be expecting that because of the fact that that's what we typed in, what you might be expecting is, well, or pet equals beaver. So that part right there is true. We have a true. That must mean the entire thing is true, right?
Yep.
Not quite. Not quite. Because what's happening is that the and there is overriding everything. That it's that and first and then the or. And I'm actually going to skip right over here, again, that order of precedence, because I really want that little slide, because you kind of broke it down perfectly here, that you're going to notice up at the very top, that first part is what's going to run first, and then the second part. So if I'm looking to see if you live in Canada, or if you like a moose or a beaver, then what I'm going to do is then go in and do my check from there. And I think I said that wrong, so I'm going to try that.
Yeah, I was going to give that another try. It didn't come out quite right. And this is hard to follow. It actually may make more sense to read than to try and say out loud. And I'll tell you the actual situation where I had this happen. It was a case where I had to say if it was a super youth, let's say it was a gold card member from the US or Canada, give them their free benefits. Mm-hmm. And the way what happened to me was if somebody wasn't a gold member, so they were only silver, and they were from USA, they were still getting the benefits. I'm like, whoa, wait a second. I said if they're a gold member and they're from the US or Canada, they get the benefits. That was the way I wrote my code. But for some reason, my silver member, who happened to be from the USA, was getting benefits. Because the and statement returned a false, but then I compared that false and said, or from USA, and they were from USA, so boom, they got the benefits.
So to bring that back to here, let's kind of break this down. So I'm going to actually go all the way back here to our initial spot, because you'll notice the line break here, and this is really what we're looking for here. So I'm just going to say erase all link, and let's kind of start this whole thing over. So here's what we're looking to do. I'm looking for two things. I want to make sure that you're in Canada. And if you're in Canada, I want to check to see if you like moose or beavers.
Yes.
If you like moose or if you like beaver, cool. We're going to go ahead and say, hey, do you play hockey as well? Because we're kind of assuming that, there's some level of stereotype.
We want to know. If you're a Canadian and you have a pet moose or beaver, man, you're a stereotypical Canadian. You must love your hockey team.
Absolutely.
So you're a Canadian and you either have a pet moose or beaver.
So what we're really looking for is this particular breakdown that we're looking, and I'm just going to fire back up my ink, we're really looking to test, first, are you in Canada? And only if you're in Canada do we care about your pet. If you're from some other country, such as Vietnam, we don't care.
Because we're not going to assume the stereotype that you play hockey if you're not from Canada.
Exactly.
That's a Canadian stereotype.
Exactly. So what's happening is this. Order of precedence is that it's running that and statement first. And if I kick back to this slide right here, because this breaks it down perfectly, it's running that part there first. And then it's running that part second. So in order for this to work, it's only going to test the way that we want it to work if you live in Canada, if you live in Canada, and if you have a moose.
Right.
But if you're the other combination, and this is the other one that we're looking for, that you live in Canada and you have a pet beaver,
then you're still good.
That's what we're looking for. That's the desired result.
That's what I'm looking for. Canadians who have a moose or Canadians who have a beaver.
Exactly.
Right?
Yes. So that one's still good. So that one's good. That one's good. But if we go in and we say, for example, US, and then our, US and our moose, there we go. Now I've got my logic. Let's talk about this. What's going to happen is it's going to be US here. It's going to be moose here. What we're looking for, I only care if you're Canadian. If you're not Canadian, we don't want to ask you about hockey. What's going to happen is it's going to test that part right there. And that's going to test as false. And then, of course, it's going to come down to the pet and test as false as well, but that's sort of irrelevant. But it's going to test as false, false.
It's going to say country. It's going to give you a false for the country is not Canada with pet moose, but the pet is a beaver. So therefore, because the part of the or statement is a true, if any part of an or statement is true, it evaluates as true.
Right.
Yeah. And actually, you know what? We have somebody has guessed the answer on how to solve this.
Cool. Can I just close
carry
this
it
off?
Through. Carry
okay.
it through.
All right. I just want to close this off,
Please do.
just because I'm trying to make sure there's no confusion here.
It's tough. It's a weird scenario, but yeah, go on.
Okay. So trying to make sure there's no confusion. So here's what we've got going on. So we want, only if you're Canada, and then again, moose, beaver. So if we put together a scenario where you are in Canada and you had a pet beaver, here's what's going to happen. Is this part right here, you're in Canada, that's going to test as true. The second part here, where it's going to test the moose, that is now going to test as false. And then our or right here is going to test as false. So that result, false,
Right?
not going to come out the way that we want it to come out. If I go in and I say Canada and I say moose, that's going to test as true. That is going to test as true. This sort of becomes irrelevant. It's going to test as false, but we've got a true. So that is going to come out as
True.
true over here.
Okay.
So what we want to make sure of is that if it turned out that you were in the US,
Okay.
but you had a beaver. So let's clear out my screen here. Let's go back in. US beaver. We don't want this to test as true.
That is correct.
So we're going to go US here. This part up here is going to test as false because that's not right.
Yep.
Then we're going to compare our beaver. That's going to test as true. Let's remember the or statement is executing second. So what's going to happen? This is going to return as
True.
true. What did we want it to return as?
We wanted it to return false.
There we go.
Yeah.
There's the whole kind of come together of all of
Yeah,
this.
I said, and it's tricky because we've got 4 different scenarios, and 3 of the 4 scenarios are working, and the 4th scenario is not working. So yes, it's confusing to follow. Our apologies. Now the good news is, fixing it. Wait till you see how easy it is.
Exactly. So this sort of goes back to when we were talking about math a while ago, that when in doubt, put parentheses around it. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to clean up the prior code that I had here. And I'm going to put in one statement. And I'm going to say this in English. If the sport is hockey, and the team is the Senators or Leafs, display the cup message. So we're looking for 2 parts. Again, that first part is, want the sport to be hockey. The second part is, we want it to be the Senators or the Leafs. That's what we're looking for. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say if. And then I'm going to say, if our sport is hockey and the team is the Rangers, oops, not the Rangers, the Senators, or the team equals the Leafs, and I'm doing this wrong the first time and I'm doing this on purpose, then print there we go. Good luck getting to the cup this year.
Okay.
All right.
That sounds good.
So again, what we're looking for is we want to make sure it's both hockey and it's the Leafs. So if I fire this back up, and I go in, and I'm going to go straight to the wrong case. So I'm going to say Leafs, and I'm going to say cricket. And I'm going to hit enter. You're going to notice it displayed the message. And that's not what we want. And the reason for that is that this and statement right here is overriding everything. That's our problem. So what we want to do is we want to surround it in parentheses. So now what we're doing is we're breaking this down into 2 separate statements. And now that part is going to be evaluated as 1. That part is going to be evaluated as a second. And then our and is what's going to do the final test there. So now, let me go in, hit start, enter my favorite hockey team. We'll go Leafs. I'm going to enter my favorite sport. I'm going to say cricket.
Yep.
Hit enter. Doesn't display anything. That's what we were looking for.
Woohoo! High five. Yes.
It doesn't display anything. Yes!
That's actually the output we wanted.
And then we'll go ahead and we'll do it again. And we'll go ahead and say hockey team is the Leafs. Our sport is hockey. We'll hit enter, and now it displays what we want. So the real takeaway that I want you to get from all of this, a couple of things. Number one, when in doubt, surround things with parentheses.
Yep.
Number two, when it comes to complex statements, break them down into smaller, bite-sized chunks to make your life that much easier. Because otherwise, this can get away from you very quickly, and dealing with logic errors can cause you to really develop a fair amount of gray hair. So be very careful about going through and doing all of this. Test everything, and again, make your code as simple as possible. You know, one of the things Susan was talking about earlier was the concept of just putting in flags. One great thing about flags, especially in a situation like this, is it can allow you to better break things down. So what I could do is maybe something like this, kind of just go in and rewrite it, and maybe something like this, is I say, if the sport is hockey, and I'm going to say sport is hockey equals false. So if it turns out that it's hockey, then we'll go ahead and say sport is hockey equals true. And then we'll go in and say team is correct equals false, and then we'll say if team equals the Senators or the team equals the Leafs, then we'll go ahead and say team is correct equals true. And then now what I can do in my final if statement is now I can say if sport is hockey and team is correct, then we'll go ahead and display out our little error message.
Yeah, so both there's some good tricks to try and avoid hitting these scenarios, but again, it comes down to test for different scenarios. You know, try every single possible combination. You've got to make sure that it operates as expected.
Absolutely.
So we've got parentheses we can use to solve the problem. We've got Boolean variables we can use to reduce the chance of hitting those situations.
Exactly.
So two great tools at our disposal.
Yep. So you'll notice that both of these blocks are the same. One of them is much longer than the other.
Yep.
The top one is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 lines of code as opposed to 2. Just because you have less lines of code doesn't necessarily mean that it's better code. Go with the one that's going to be the most readable. You know, don't be afraid to go in and break things down like that.
Yep.
Okay. Cool. And by the way, just to sort of prove the point, favorite team, Rangers, sport, let's use the right team, Christopher, Senators.
Getting into the day, typing skills diminishing.
Exactly.
We'll have to wrap up soon.
Hockey, enter. And so you'll notice that it's displaying out, good luck getting a cup this year, twice.
Because you have both your if statements are in there.
Exactly, both the if statements, and that proves that they are both doing the exact same thing. Let me go back in, hit start again, and let's go in and say Senators and cricket, and now we should notice it doesn't do anything.
Perfect.
So there's our little fringe case. So yeah, so again, whatever's going to make the most sense to you, and to go back to this one more time, you know.
Do we have to? No, I don't mean it that way, Chris. I'm sorry whatsoever. It's a tough one. It's a long day. No, you've got two fantastic options for solutions there of solving the problem, and now you've proven you've got it working.
Yep.
When you enter the correct data, it's giving the right output. Mm-hmm. When you enter the scenario that was failing earlier, it's giving you the correct output.
Right.
And so the last point you wanted to make?
Was just simply that, again, there's multiple ways to do the exact same thing.
Yeah.
Go with whatever's going to be the easiest
Absolutely.
for you. That's really it.
Okay. It's nice that you have both those solutions up there, because it's interesting. We're actually seeing some comments in the screen that they love your solution with the Boolean flags, and that suddenly people are like, oh, the light bulb's clicking, and I like that solution. So I can see that solution's really resonating with a lot of the people on there.
Excellent, excellent. I like that. All right, so last little thing then is nesting our if statements together. So again, things can get much more complex. So what you're going to notice here is that we can go ahead and break things down. So you'll notice if Monday, and then you'll also notice down below if not fresh coffee. So, you know, kind of keeping in mind what would happen is it's first going to check to see if it's Monday, and if it is, then it would run this block of code and then do a secondary check. Now, one thing that you might be wondering is, well, wait a minute, couldn't you have just done an AND statement here? Because in order for that little line of code right there to run, both Monday needs to be true and this needs to be false. So couldn't we have gone in and maybe just left that at fresh coffee and written that with an AND statement and put it together? You probably could have done it that way, but the biggest thing is that we also want to print that out as well, that there's something else that we want to do if it turns out that it's Monday. So if it turns out that it's Monday, we want to print out I hate Mondays. If it turns out that it's Monday and we don't have fresh coffee, then that's when we want to do that. So you're going to notice that we need to do multiple things on that top if statement.
Yep.
So you can go in and tab in and nest your if statements. Now, we've already seen this. If statements can get away from you in a hurry.
Yep.
So be very careful how things are indented. Be very careful about how you document things. So that way you can better determine and better explain what it is that's going to happen. And in particular, to go with the tabbing part of things, if I had taken that little print and I tabbed that in, that would then only work if we didn't have fresh coffee and if it was Monday.
Yep.
Okay. So let's close all of this out with a demo here, and let me go in and do this. And
you can see why practicing becomes
that.
so important. We talked about that in a couple of the modules, but it's essential to practice, and we've talked about how essential it is to test. And all of these, you know, different scenarios and combinations, it starts to get a bit confusing after a while, but it just reinforces that basic principle. You've got to try things, you've got to test things. So practice, practice, practice. Write different if statements, different combinations. So get used to, whoops, I forgot to indent, and finding that mistake when you forget to do the indenting. Those sorts of things are going to happen. So the more you practice, you will make mistakes, but the more you practice, the faster you're going to get at finding those mistakes.
Exactly. Yep,
Yeah.
That's exactly it. So what I'm doing here is I'm just kind of going back and creating one last little scenario here where, and let's just go in and do one last print statement. There we go. So what you're going to notice is if it's hockey, then we're going to print out go hockey. If it's Senators, good luck getting the cup. And then down at the very end, I'm going to say we do love hockey. So I'm going to go in and I'm going to play this, and I'm going to type in Senators, and I'm going to type in hockey, and I'm going to hit enter. And you'll notice that it gives us all three because it's hockey and it's the Senators.
Right.
Okay. Now, the next little part there is I want to tab this in real quick just so we can see what happens with that tab in. And let's go in and let's say Rangers for our favorite team.
Yep.
Hockey for our favorite sport. And you'll notice it only says go hockey.
Yes.
Let's do this one more time. Let's go back here and let's just get rid of a tab. Mm-hmm. Let's go ahead and run this again. Let's go in and say Rangers again.
What a difference a tab makes.
Hockey again. Exactly. And you'll notice that this time it actually printed out both go hockey and we do love hockey. It was all about that tab. So if I tab that in, now I hit start again, Rangers, I say hockey, and you'll notice that it's only displaying out go hockey. So you're going to notice there that that tab makes all the difference. And, you know, a couple people mentioned earlier when we were talking about if statements that those tabs are very subtle, and I'm with you, but trust me, while yes, it doesn't necessarily impact the syntax in other languages, it impacts the readability. And that's almost just as important, if not more so in a lot of cases, because if I can't look at code and figure out what it's doing, that's going to lead to even more problems. Awesome. All right, so.
Fantastic, Christopher. Holy smokes, man. You've got a tough module for the end of a day. I had to give you you had to have the most complex logic situation to deal with at the end of a long day. Well done.
Thank you. I'm glad we finally got to break that down there. Took a little work, but we got there. The challenge then. And I'm going to kind of let you guys read through this on your own. But the big thing that I want to point out, and this is very much a real world thing, is you're going to notice that what we're trying to do is give you a scenario that's real world. And if you're dealing with a lot of countries, and Canada is a great example, where you've got different general taxes for the country, you've got different provincial taxes, the way that they combine them together can be different, and so forth. Here's your different scenarios. So if you're from one province, apply this tax. If you're from a different province, apply this. And all of that can be done with if statements. And again, up on the GitHub, we do have solutions for all of that.
And breathe. Ladies and gentlemen, you have learned so much today.
We've covered a decent amount of
how much
ground.
everybody's had a chance to learn.
Yeah.
And the cool thing is we do have some more fun stuff for you tomorrow. We're going to get into reading and writing to files. We're also going to get into loops and have a little fun doing that with a program that actually allows you to start drawing funky shapes on the screen. So we'll have some fun with that. So it'll give us a chance to do some fun new things tomorrow. Anything we need to do tonight before we wrap up?
Yeah, absolutely. There was one last poll question down there at the very bottom of the screen. If you want to go ahead and hit a choice on there, do want to thank everybody for sticking with us. It's been a lot of fun. We've been loving seeing all the
awesome.
different comments. Absolutely. And hopefully you guys have had a fair amount of fun. I know I had a blast. I'm going to assume that you had a blast.
It's been an absolute blast. Having a lot of fun.
Excellent, excellent. So with that, we've got a lot more to cover come tomorrow. So 9 a.m. Pacific Daylight Time. Daylight Time for still about another hour, or about another month. Come on back tomorrow morning. We'll pick it up. Day 2, learning to program with Python. Again, Susan Ibach. I'm Christopher Harrison. We will see you tomorrow morning. Thanks again for
Can I just briefly ask you, do you remember off the top of your head the aka.ms URL for the GitHub for those people who wanted to go look at it? I know this is tough at the end of the day. And
intro Python code?
So
I'll look it up. I tell you what, I'll look it up. I'll put it into the chat window.
There we go. So because I had a couple people asking, hey, I remember you mentioned it was GitHub What's List. We'll put that in the chat window before we leave.
Actually, wait a minute. Tell you what, I can do that. Yeah, it just dawned on me. I had it in a notepad. If Danny, you want to just take my screen?
Awesome. I knew you'd be organized. There we go.
There we go. Intro. Hey, if we rewind the tape, I said that correctly.
Well done. There we go. Awesome. Excellent.
All right. So there's the shortcut to all the GitHub code. We'll kind of push out all of our last changes here momentarily, so you'll have access to everything that we've done.
All the demos, solutions to the challenges, a reminder of what the challenges were, the PowerPoint decks, all that stuff, so you can review. And of course, later these will all be online recorded as well, so you can watch them, review them, watch them at your own pace, and so on.
Exactly.
Looking forward to seeing you tomorrow.
We'll see you guys tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. Pacific time. Can't wait.